This time on Boneyard Revivals, we are continuing our mini-series here on Small Block Chevy cylinder heads. Today, we're going to be wrapping up with our last single comparison here, and we are going to be talking about the Vortec cylinder head. First things you need to know about the Vortec cylinder heads. Pull out my cheat sheet notes here. These were in 305s and 350s from 1996 to 2000. Now I've seen some research that I did, whether I'm right or wrong, not saying I'm right. I've seen certain applications they were used up until like 2001, 2002. In certain applications. Whether that's true or not, I think they were van applications, but either way, let's just say 96 to 2000 just to call it a day. There's two casting numbers for these Vortec cylinder heads, the 062s and the 906s. This happens to be an 062 casting head, and if you haven't been around the channel long enough, we did a build up on a set of 906 heads. If you want to see that, I'll leave the link up here somewhere so you can go check that out. And you're probably wondering, the last two cylinder heads, they were complete. They had valves and stuff. Why do these have no valves or valve springs or retainers or anything like that? It's because these were literally just purchased a few days ago. Joe over at the machine shop had these laying around for a while, and I told him, you know, hey, if you're not doing nothing with them, I guess I gave you money for them, and instead of collecting rust at your place, they'll come over to my place and collect rust. So here they are. But with that being said, I figured they would be perfect to kind of show you guys. Obviously, I can't show you the 906 heads because they're on the 350 and my square body. So with that being said, we're going to do the comparison on these. All the information that you need to know is here and here. And just because it doesn't have any of the stuff inside of it, doesn't matter. You'll still get the gist of it, hopefully. So, with this being an 062 casting, and the 062s and the 906 Vortec heads were pretty much the same. There wasn't I don't think there wasn't many, if not any noticeable differences between both of them. They both had a 194 intake valve and a 150 exhaust valve, and they're both 64cc chambers. One of the other things about these heads, these are also part of the center bolt gang, which I honestly despise. I don't like the center bolts. They seal really good, but they're a pain in the butt to find nice, good-looking valve covers for that don't cost you an arm and a leg. But when you look at the flow numbers compared to not what they flow, you kind of suck it up and just go with it. These heads have had a few special things done to them that I would honestly recommend if you got yourself a set of these heads. The guide bosses have been cut down, and they have been, the press and studs have been pulled out, and they've been actually tapped to take a 3/8 stud, which is super good for these. You always, with any head that you have built, I would always 10 out of 10 recommend just putting in screw and stud, because if you put a big rowdy cam in it and it's got a press and stud, it can potentially rip that stud right out of it. So I always recommend doing that. These heads have also had a bowl blend done on them, so basically these heads sitting here in front of you right now is pretty much the same exact thing that we did to our 906s, so I figured they were a pretty good straight up comparison, and those are both things I would recommend you have and someone do if you ever decide to build a set of these heads. Now you can go crazier, you can go with bigger exhaust valves, intake valves. There's actually a trick that you can put LS valve springs in these, which were pretty cool, and a bunch of other little trinkets like that, but I'm just going to come out and make the claim, make the argument right here, right now. With the intake design, with the intake port design, and just the overall chamber size, these are the best small block Chevy heads for flowing. From the factory. From the factory. Keyword there. When it comes to a cast head application that rolled off the factory showroom floor, these Vortec heads are the best, in my opinion. Someone else is probably going to argue with that and say that they're not, and then they're going to start arguing about the camel hump heads, and some camel hump heads came with a 202 valve and blah blah whatever. Look. Now with that though, they did have their flaws and issues. These were prone to cracking. Unfortunate, I know. And a lot of them were really, really notorious for cracking across your coolant passages here. They would crack from where your head bolt goes in up here, and there's a few other spots they would as well. So, yeah, did they have their issues? Yeah, but you know what? For the reward that you get when you find a good pair, and even some of them, there is repairs you can do. We actually, the set of 906s we had did have a crack. We replaced them, and I can tell you they've been perfectly fine. And they've gone a few thousand miles at this point, and who knows how many more miles they're going to go. If, hey, something goes wrong, I'll let you know. But with that being said, they've been good to me so far, and those heads were in pretty rough shape when we got them. But these heads don't actually have any cracks besides, which I'd have to fix them, which I'm going to. These ones have cracks in the stud bosses here, which really kind of sucks, but we can fix that. I'm not too scared by that. I think another reason why these are such a good head is because you can actually still find these in a junkyard. You walk up to any 96 to 2000 Silverado and it's gonna have these heads on it if it's a Vortec. And like I said, if you can get yourself a set of cylinder heads for $200 out of a junkyard that are in good shape, yeah, you gotta hope and pray that they're not cracked, which kind of sucks. But if they check out and then you have another, you know, let's just say, let's be honest, if you're doing cylinder heads right nowadays and you're sending them to a guy who knows what he's doing, you don't expect anything less than at least like a $1,000 to $1,100 bill when you get that bill and that charge. But with that being said, I still think that with that sort of money being spent, knowing that you have a good head, that your guides are going to be good, your guide clearances got checked, your valve concentricity, which has to do with how the valves were cut, all that stuff, if that's well within not only industry spec, but within the certain spec from your engine builder. I at least know my engine builder is crazy about that. That's why it's good to have a really good engine builder. But I know that's stuff that he really does care about, so every time I take a set of cylinder heads over to his shop like these, when I go over to pick them up and throw them on an engine, I know that they're going to be the best that they're going to be. And that's something where, for me, when it comes to a quality standpoint, it's worth spending the money on that. And that's any cast head. I'm not just saying this because all the Vortec heads are the best, or at least that's, you know, where I'm at with them. But any sort of cast cylinder head. If you're buying stuff that's used, I'll be honest with you, if I see anything off Marketplace, I literally just don't even look at it because of that. You can't trust nobody nowadays. Everybody's really sketchy on what they do to stuff. And even these heads, someone else did the bowl blending job and all that stuff, but it looks half decent. And I've bowl blended a set of these heads before, so I wouldn't be afraid to get in there and do them again. And like I said, I think these would be a really good usable head. We do have plans for these in the future, and I'm thinking something around a oriented max build coming up for these. Biggest valves you could possibly put in them, some LS springs, all that good stuff. I think that'll be coming up in the future for these, and then we'll get these on some things. The one big con I will give about these Vortec stuff is that if you decide to go with a Vortec head, you have to be Vortec specific. Which is kind of annoying, simply because that means you have to get the center bolt style valve covers, and you also need to get a Vortec specific intake manifold if you plan on going carbureted. The holes for that intake are completely different and completely just honestly a pain in the butt for me. Basically, they changed the bolt size and also the layout of the bolts. So they're still in your, for the most part, your same locations, except there is no longer two center bolts like there is on the swirl port heads and the other heads that we discussed about in earlier videos. This one, you need to get it specific. So it's only 8 bolts instead of, what, 12, I believe? Yeah, you see me do the math there? Yeah, I had to do the math. But yeah, and one of the other things too about it is that the angles completely change, where basically when the intake actually sits on the cylinder head, the bolts are pretty much straight up and down when they go in, like that, and it's a little bit different. Now, does that create a problem for sealing your intake gasket here? Yes and no. I think I haven't had any issues with with the pair that I did yet. But it is one of those things that does kind of stink, because then you have to get make sure you got your specific bolts and everything like that. So that's the only downside, in my opinion, to switching to a Vortec head, is you got to watch out for the cracking. But as long as you get them checked, magnet peened, and they come back good, you should be alright. And there is ways to fix them in case you do have a crack. Some guys are going to tell you in the comment section that's not worth the money, and hey, they could be right in their own way. For me, with how much I paid for these heads, and then the fact that I literally got this the 906s for free, and basically traded stuff, horse traded some parts. For me, it wasn't too bad to go, yeah, you know what, I'm going to spend a little bit more extra money to get these fixed up and still use them. But yeah, so now, like I said, and honestly, I think a big concern is too with these Vortec heads is, you know, just the fact that people just for whatever reason just don't like these because they crack and because of all the other BS you got to go through to make them work. But I'll be honest with you, I think they are the best small block Chevy cast head that you can get from the factory. And if you find yourself in a position where you have a set of these heads, or any of the other two heads that we've talked about throughout this series, and you had to choose which ones to rebuild, my pick would be these. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't seen the other two videos, make sure you go ahead and check out those videos. They'll be in the channel somewhere. Find them. That, or I'll just try to remember to leave a link here too. So click there and I'll show you that stuff too. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned. We have one last video on these guys where we're lining all three of them up and comparing them. And we'll see you then. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.